Hi, Year 4, it's Mr. Tomlinson here. I'm going to read for you chapter 22 of Emma Carroll's Secrets of a Sun King. There are 23 chapters in this story, so one chapter left after this one. This is quite a short chapter. Thank you to all those children who sent in their answers to the questions about chapter 21. We've reached a really exciting point in this story where the children have rumbled Mr. Carter, Howard Carter's illegal activities the night before the official opening of the tomb, when he went with a group of other people to see what was in there before everybody else, which he wasn't allowed to do. And the children got him, okay? And at the end of the last chapter he said, "I will not be held to ransom by a group of children." And then Lil said, "We got him beautifully." And she was delighted about that. So we now move to part 5. And it's a very short part, there's just 2 chapters, but lots happens. So enjoy, and there'll be a few questions after I finish reading. The very next day, Mr. Carter decided to put the record straight. That's in inverted commas. He offered Mrs. Mendoza and Alex an exclusive interview, the only condition being that no children should be present. I was very glad to hear it. Frankly, I'd had enough of his stories. In a hired room at the Winter Palace, Mr. Carter came clean about what they called their preliminary viewing, again in inverted commas, of the tomb that night. He had, without meaning to, put a piece of ancient plasterwork in his jacket pocket, but that was all accounted for. No harm done. I imagined Mrs. Mendoza and Alex furiously writing all this down in their notebooks. They certainly were pretty thrilled with their final story, which was wired not to Mr. Pemberton at the Washington Post, but to the Cairo Gazette. An Egyptian story deserved an Egyptian publication, Mrs. Mendoza said. And that goes back to the children talking about the contents of the tomb belonging to Egypt. And the story now belongs to Egypt, they believe too. Neither Lord Carnarvon nor Lady Evelyn took part in the interview. The exclusive deal they were pushing for was with the Times, famous UK newspaper. According to Pepe, though, the real reason was that Mr. Carter and Lord Carnarvon had been arguing over how best to clear the tomb. All their good fortune came at a price. You see, nobody, not even Mr. Carter, had expected the tomb to be so jammed full of treasure. Bizarrely, by being such a rushed, unroyal-looking grave, Tutankhamun's official resting place had remained untouched like no other tomb before it, not even Kaiki's. Mr. Carter was very confident that when they opened the inner chamber, they'd find the young pharaoh's remains intact. We kept quiet about that, because they obviously know better, don't they? Suffice to say, the story in the Cairo Gazette made life difficult for Mr. Carter. The call for more Egyptian involvement in the dig grew, and Mr. Carter, stubborn as the donkeys he rode, locked the gate on the dig and declared the excavation season over until spring. Things were definitely not going to plan. Or as Pepe put it, Tutankhamun's curse has turned its sights on Mr. Carter at last. Just have a quick drink. When Mrs. Mendoza announced it was time for us to go home, I was both excited and apprehensive. I'd had no more news about Grandad, so I wasn't sure what exactly I'd find when I got to London. There were farewells to say to 3 old friends, now together in their little cliff-top tomb, and to 3 new ones. Pepe, Charlie and Chaplin, who'd made me think about many things, including camels, in a whole different light. Tulip sobbed like a baby, saying goodbye to Chaplin. "I'll write," she promised him. The look on Pepe's face was a picture. I wonder what he thought of Tulip saying that she would write to a camel. On our very last evening, when everyone else had gone to bed, I stayed up on deck by myself. As I lay there, listening to the river lapping gently against the boat's hull, I heard a rustling coming from the reeds on the riverbank. I sat up just in time to see a dog creep to the water's edge. It was only a couple of feet away, close enough to touch. I could see it wasn't a normal dog. It was bigger and quieter than the mangy strays from the town, and its ears stuck up on the top of his head, like the Anubis on Kaiki's jar. I wondered if it might be a jackal. I hoped it was. It felt right that it should be, somehow. As the jackal started drinking, I kept absolutely still. Then it heard something in the distance, and its head went up. It saw me watching. For the tiniest moment, we stared right back at each other, before it turned tail and vanished. I'd like to think it was a sign that the gods of ancient Egypt were protecting Kaiki. Despite all Mr. Carter's digging and cataloguing, the real Tutankhamun finally was free. 6.5 days later, we were home. London was upon us all far too quickly. In the suburbs, we passed acres and acres of new houses being built. After Cairo, the view from the window as we came into St Pancras station was grey, cold, dreary. Yet there were Christmas lights, twinkling prettily in all the shops, and a definite cosiness to all the lamp-lit windows and smoking chimney pots. Dear London, how I loved it. I was glad to be back. Mrs. Mendoza had wired ahead to say we were returning, and there they were, both Mum and Dad waiting at the ticket barrier. They had on their best coats and hats, and their faces when they saw me coming made me well up with tears. I hesitated, though, when I spotted who else was there with them, wrapped up against the cold. Though he looked small and pale, it was definitely an improvement on when I'd last seen him in a hospital bed. Besides, I'd have known those twinkling blue eyes anywhere. Grandad! I ran the last few yards, suitcase thumping against my leg. Grandad reached out his arms and I went straight into them. I buried my face deep into his coat. He smelled of old things and Nefertiti, the cat. Oh, Lily! He hugged me tightly, drew away to look at me, hugged me again. Hands patted on my shoulders. I heard my mum say my name, then Dad clear his throat. We were all having a bit of a cry. There were more hugs, hands shaken, as the Mendozas joined us at the barrier. In the hustle and bustle of it all, I noticed Grandad go very still. He'd been pale before, but now the colour completely drained from his face. I panicked, thinking he was about to collapse or something. Do you need to sit down? I asked him. But it wasn't that he was ill. He'd seen someone behind me, over my shoulder. I turned around, and there was Alex, looking every bit as startled as himself. Now, very short chapter, that one. I wonder how Grandad knows Alex. All will be revealed in the final chapter, chapter 23, which is coming in the next few days. Look out for it. It's lots of things revealed, lots of questions answered, so it's a really exciting chapter. And then there's a few other things that I will read towards the end of the book, where there are comments from Emma Carroll herself about how she wrote the book and why she wrote the book. Questions for today. Number one, why do you think Mr. Carter wanted no children present? Number two, what does inadvertently mean? So we have to go back through where I used that word, try and have a think about what it might mean. If you're not sure, you could talk to people at home on what that word means. You could also look it up online. If you've got a dictionary at home, you could look in the dictionary as well. But have a think about how I used it in the sentence that I did. Number three, why did Mr. Carter lock the tomb up? And number four, this is the last one, you're getting off lightly today. Number four, why might Grandad have needed to sit down? And I sort of alluded to that at the end. Why is he shocked to see Alex? Okay. Getting towards the end of Emma Carroll's Secrets of a Sun King, also getting towards the end of our school year. Keep sending your work to the Year 4 homework email. Keep watching the Rawnsley Roundup, where more news will be coming out over the next couple of weeks. Keep safe, everyone. Look after each other, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.